Welcome in once again. Every Monday, we get together for the Striker MLS Podcast. My name is Jon Arnold, joined by my brothers in soccer in Austin, Chris Bils, in Houston, Victor Araiza. And guys, as I wrote in this week's newsletter, it's never happened before that all three Texas teams have won on the same day. Part of that is Austin coming into the league a little late. Houston did their job. Dallas did their job. Chris Bils, Austin didn't do their job, man. You told us they were going to win 5-0 again.
Did I say that? No.
Expected goals, I think is what you called it.
They had it late into the night. There might have been some folks in Dallas and Houston that were in bed by the time we found out whether Austin had pulled it off. But no, alas. Well, tell us what we should call a Texas sweep.
I think a Texas three-step, but look, we probably got time to figure it out because although the teams are starting to look good, certainly the memories of last year seem to be fading away in a Texas MLS sense, which is good news. I think, it might still be a while till we get this thing happening. Decision Day 2019 was the last time it happened. FC Dallas and Houston both won. Austin didn't exist yet, so they couldn't lose. But let's start in Houston with we're going to get to all three games. We're going to recap the weekend just like we always do on the show. We're going to tell you about the best thing that we ate all weekend. I'm excited to hear what Chris Bils got into in Portland. Victor will tell us about his mom's cooking in Houston. We're going to get into all three games. Also look forward quickly to the MLS weekend. But right now, it's Monday morning. Let's look back. And let's start off by looking back at the Houston Dynamo's first win of the year. Victor 2-1. Over Vancouver Whitecaps. Take us through the highlights a little bit here, a game that I thought would be a Vancouver victory because we hadn't seen Houston really do anything on the attack. But then a man named Darwin Quintero showed up.
Yeah, and look, Chris wants to know what Houston fans were doing at that point at night. They were partying because this was.
I don't appreciate Chris Bils suggesting that Dallas and Houston is full of grandparents. You're not asleep at 10 p.m., man. Come on.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Look, and this play here by Vancouver, obviously Cavallini with a great goal. It was essentially all of Vancouver's attack for the first half. I mean, this was a great opportunity off the wing that Cavallini gets in behind Parker and Steris, but other than that, everything was all Houston in the first half. Possession, they had chances, and you mentioned you thought Vancouver was going to win. They got off to a lead. They didn't press after this, which that's kind of their fault. But the big question here was how was Houston going to respond, right? Because the story last year was, all right, these are the kinds of games where they should win at home. They didn't. Maybe here we go again, but no, this is a different Houston in a way. They did respond. They did come back. I hear some of the plays, right, where they started to get back in it. Paulo Nagamura had mentioned in recent games after the Kansas City game in particular, they needed a little bit more training, right? And then off a training ground, this play right here, they practiced this, I'm sure, multiple times over the past couple of weeks, and they hit it in a game. Karaskia, the key here, maybe gets a little bit overlooked because Quintero ends up with the 2 goals, but Bear does the right thing, just pushes it back. Quintero just slides it in, and that's it. It's tied 1-1. The mentality, I think, is what it is what Paulo Nagamura mentioned after the game. It's something that he's trying to fix, right? It's been a losing team. They're trying to get these players to be a different team, become winners. Pat Onstad has said it himself too. And look, here's some of the things that Darwin Quintero can do in this game, right? That's why he's one of your more creative players. That's why he's one of your more talented players. Despite his age, despite how many minutes he can give you, there's nobody that can do what he does, right?
That was the question. That was the question, right? Like, is he going to be able to give you enough time? And, he goes into the starting lineup. I know he left the game at the 75th minute, but it seems like this worked better than just tossing him on for 20 minutes at the end of the game.
Right. And at this point, I mean, he's a little confident now, hits this one, right? That kind of just falls to him. And let's remember in prior games, right, in RSL and Kansas City, he had some chances that didn't go in, right? And we're all wondering, well, if that one goes in, well, this one actually did, right? We can talk about this one being the game winner. Ferreira incorrectly gets the MLS assist. It's pushed away there by Vancouver, right? But again, I mean, it's a team that's rolling a little bit. Maybe they should have gotten another one, later in the game. But and it got complicated at the end, as maybe we'll see here with the ending, right? Because Vancouver didn't go quietly into the night. They did have some chances. I think not be in the lead anymore, having to chase the game, forced them into having to look for at least a point on the road. When I do think Vancouver botched this a little bit. Maybe you give them too much credit, John. I don't know.
Well, they're missing some key players as well, right? I mean, that's another thing is that Houston beat this team. They should have beat them. They win at home.
That was the case with Salt Lake, and they didn't do it. I mean, so
no, I'm not trying to take anything away from the win. I mean, I think this is an important win for the Dynamo. I think fair enough. You got 3 points at home. That's what we said you needed to do, and they got it from the right foot. In a way for this home stretch, which we're talking about as being so critical. And at the same time, it's not, you're not ready to say the Dynamo have turned it around quite yet because it's a weakened Whitecaps team that you're saying didn't take advantage of their opportunities.
No, it's one game, and they almost screwed us up at the end. I mean, that's a very relaxed Nakamura getting his first MLS win as a head coach. They did almost botch it at the end, right? Griffin Dorsey did have a great save. But they very well could have come away with a point, and it could have been the same. Oh, it's the same old Dynamo. Or, I'm not gonna buy my season tickets until they put more money into this team. I mean, this was a feel good win, but yeah, it has to be taken with a grain of salt. It literally is in a way the one game at a time approach, right? All right, you got the 3 points here. You focused on Vancouver. Now you have a Colorado team that's again, I think, very winnable game coming up, and then maybe you're heading into the international break with 7 points. It looks like you're a little bit in business. I will say this: we were talking about kind of week to week. When you have these games spread out like this a little bit, right, once a week, I do think you can kind of go to the well with Quintero. You got to give Nagamura credit where he has the team buying in. The results help now, right? But he does have he has a Quintero on his side. He's on Quintero's good side too, right? But how long can this last? I think you can take this approach with Karaskia and Quintero up until maybe May. It gives you enough time to, hopefully sooner rather than later, you bring in a key attacking piece, and then maybe you're in business for the rest of the season. But you still need better players.
Tell me more about Karaskia coming in, because you mentioned he's kind of the secret key there. He was in the team for the first 2 weeks. You mentioned maybe he had a knock or something that was keeping him from starting, but he starts in this game, again, goes 75 minutes, but was it just fitness for both of these guys? The team is clearly better when they play their best players.
Right, and to me, Karaskia was the man of the match. I know Quintero's going to get the 2 goals, but Karaskia, this win doesn't happen without him, right? You saw the first goal. He's pushing forward. He was, I think, the connection between the defense and the attack. That's a key question as well, because his loan is up June 30th. Are you going to keep him? I think it's beneficial, right? I mean, he can get some playing time here. If Panama gets to the World Cup, I mean, that's another World Cup player you have. That's a potential stage where you can maybe sell him if you get some eyes on him. But yeah, he's one of your better players as well. And if you lose him in the summer, you get Herrera in, but now you're having to worry about somebody else when you already know what you have with him. I think if you have Herrera in midfield, you have Karaskia, maybe who can play more of what he does with Panama, right? And box to box, and then you still bring another key attacking piece, then you're really in business. Then you can start talking about the Houston Dynamo being a contender. But for the short term, I do think, these are 2 more of your most talented players, Karaskia and Quintero. They have to see the field.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was going to mention with Karaskia, but with the Dynamo kind of getting off the schneid here, scoring some goals. I think it's just, what did you see from Vancouver, though? I guess it's a question we've been asking about Austin the last couple of weeks. Yeah,
they came hit and hit it. They came in and hit it, right? They did the same thing as at Salt Lake, and this is what a lot of teams do when they come to Houston. Vancouver historically hasn't been that good, right? They've won once. And I don't know if it's a Pacific Northwest thing, because Portland has had some other issues, not recently, right? Because they won, I think, last year, but
having Q2.
Yeah, but I mean, but there's been these issues with the Pacific Northwest teams. I don't know if it's the travel, if it's because it's almost 4 hours on a plane, what have you. But that's one of the reasons why I saw Houston winning this game.
And Vancouver 0 wins so far this year, and yet I was getting made fun of on the Striker MLS picks when I put Vancouver in, I think, third or fourth bottom in the conference. Well, who's laughing now? I know I got my Dynamo prediction very wrong. Yeah. The official account calling us out. I thought we might be able to have the screenshot of that, but
Shout out to Phil West. He's still hanging on to hope for Vancouver.
Listen, I have no problem getting called out by the @Houston Dynamo account. And I like the people who run it. I understand the banter, but at the same time, people seem to be thinking that I should have predicted the Dynamo to win this game. Victor, the Dynamo came into this game with an XG of what, 0.3 in the first 2 games? No, come on. This was a big step forward. And we didn't know, I don't think, that Karaskia was going to go 75 and that Quintero was going to go 75. And look, like, I understand, maybe you don't want to have your season depend on Quintero because of his fitness, because of his age.
Well, you can't.
He's had these stretches of inconsistency. Okay, that's fine. And maybe you can't. But at the same time, he's your best player right now, right? Or Karaskia, who also is coming back from these issues, who also has these clouds over his future. So I think it's a great win for Houston. You said people were celebrating until way past Chris Bils' bedtime. But at the same time, I think there's still plenty of reason to say, hold on, this team isn't totally formed yet. And of course, everything still is leading up to that Hector Herrera arrival in the summer.
Yeah, no, I think I still think the position for Quintero is coming off the bench. Again, not being a guy you depend on, but for that, you still need a key attacking piece. I don't know how much money Tetsigo still has up for to be able to put into this team, but I do think because we're talking about look, you spend $4 million on Sebastián Ferreira, right? Or upwards of $4 million is what we're seeing reported. I think that money would have been better well spent going into the midfield first. And who knows? Maybe we'll get a couple of answers here in the next couple of weeks of what they plan to do. But to me, that was the position to address. That's still a position you need to address. And if you want to be a contender, you need a better attacking piece. You can't depend on Darwin Quintero. It's fine for now. It's a stopgap, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I kind of like them spending money on a forward, but I don't think that certainly doesn't just solve your problems, right?
You need service.
I like your Atlético San Luis mug. They of course get the big win against Puebla first. L put on Puebla. I know you're
I thought Larcamón was going to win Liga MX.
Let's move on to FC Dallas's first win of the season as well. A 2-0 victory over Nashville SC. It was a first half that was somewhat even, I would say. FC Dallas probably had the better of it, but didn't get a ton of opportunities. The best opportunity in the first half, perhaps concerningly, once again fell to Jesus Ferreira's feet, and he wasn't able to convert, pushed it just to the wrong side of the post around the 21st minute after a good connection from Marco Farfan and Jader Obrian down the left side. Into the second half, Alan Velasco makes his debut, and the game changed for FC Dallas, which is good news when your record signing is a game changer, when he's making a difference in his very first game in MLS. He played a little bit of a role in the first goal, Brandon Cervenia putting a ball across a goal and Paul Arriola taken down in the box. Penalty. Referee got sent to the VAR monitor after calling a penalty. I thought this was very weird because usually when you see the ref go to the monitor, they look and they say, I got it wrong. Thanks, VAR. You're my guy or lady. And, they changed the call. It was pretty clearly still a penalty, at least from my eyes, and from the referees as well. The penalty stands after a bit of a discussion between Franco Jara, Velasco, and Jesus Ferreira. It's Franco who takes the penalty kick and buries it. FC Dallas goes up 1-0 in the 85th minute. And then just a few moments later, guys, if you haven't seen it, you can see it on the Striker Texas. You can see it on our Twitter channels. You can see it on Instagram. This Alan Velasco goal is unbelievable. It's a fantastic goal. It's the type of goal that we haven't seen FC Dallas score. I mean, I wrote in my story, Chris, this is one of the best goals that I can remember at Toyota Stadium. And I've seen a lot of them. And I was trying to think, maybe I'm being a bit, using too much hyperbole here. Maybe I shouldn't put this goal in this category yet. But oh my goodness, if Alan Velasco can keep doing things like this, FC Dallas is not going to have him for long because this guy's going to go to Europe sooner rather than later. Unbelievable goal.
Yeah, the hype train has got to be off the charts for this. And it kind of reminds me of, we haven't really seen anybody making magic for FC Dallas since, Mauro Diaz?
Yeah, really? Sure, Mauro Diaz. But even then, he's more of a connector. And Velasco, I think, probably ends up being that type of player as well, where he's not necessarily going to be scoring 15 goals for you this year, although 30 minutes, 1 goal. So, the ratio is looking good. But I wrote in my deeper analysis that people can check out on the Striker Texas, the 3 things that run every Sunday morning or the day after the game. You could see him doing things as soon as he got in that were just different from what other FC Dallas players were doing. The way he used, the way he got vertical, the way he took on defenders one-on-one. He attempted 6 dribbles. Now, only, I think 2 of them came off. But at the same time, I think that, he's just trying things, and we haven't really seen players like that before, even in MLS, right? But I think that his willingness to go for the dribble, maybe he learns to rein that in a little bit, but the fact that he has that in his toolbox is a great sign. And, there are other maybe bright spots and dark spots, I think, for FC Dallas in this game, but ultimately it's Nico Estevez, the manager's first ever win, Victor, but a game that's going to be remembered for the brilliance of this Argentine import.
Yeah, and that's what you paid, $7 million or whatever 100%. The transfer fee was. I mean, that's what you want. That's what you need out of these kinds of players. And look, it's not just him. I think I've been saying on this podcast, I thought they were going to hit another gear, but it's not just because you're plugging in Velasco. It's because you got Paul Arriola on the other side. Yes. Pamico's back, right? Ferreira is in a different level. So it's a more complete team.
Yeah, I think Ferreira is a guy who still has this sort of, I don't even think it's pressure from the media or from fans, or certainly not from the coaching staff, but I think he has this internal pressure where he has a new contract. He has to be the guy this year. And I think he is feeling that a little bit, and nothing would be better for him than to score a goal. I really do think that once he scores, the good
thing is you got an experienced guy like Jara, just in case.
Yeah, and how much do you think having Velasco, if he's going to perform like this, kind of takes some of that pressure off and gets him more of a volume of chances?
I mean, you both are making good points where you say, hey, there's other guys who can do it now. And I think that's going to be critical. Last year for Pepe and Jesus, it was like, if you don't do it, who's going to? And they sometimes rose to the occasion. We saw Pepe have a fantastic season, but there were still times where it was like, this team can't just get the ball to Pepe and pray, right? And that doesn't seem to be the philosophy this year. I think the goal from Velasco takes some pressure off Jesus because he's not competing for that spot. And Victor, you make an interesting point because Franco Jara, much maligned, he's the highest paid player on the team. He's currently kind of a super sub, but at the same time, he comes in, he played a part in the build-up for that penalty. He was good, I think, as an outlet for players in the attack after coming on. And he's a guy who had an injury during the preseason, so he wasn't necessarily able to play in week 1, week 2, and I still don't think could go 90 minutes.
I still think there's two. Well, go ahead.
No, I just think that FC Dallas fans are not fans, frankly, of Franco Jara. I'm not saying that people are, they're not saying, oh, he's not fit to wear the shirt, but I just think it's like, oh, that guy. Yes, but he's a guy who could be a great utility for this team, and I think is a great guy for Jesus Ferreira and Alan Velasco. You saw them kind of palling around after the game. He's a great utility for those guys to bounce ideas off of, to talk frustrations with, and it's kind of funny because if he accepts that role as this sort of wizened veteran in the locker room and guy who's happy to come off the bench every game and try to score a goal if you're behind, he's a great asset. Is he a $3 million asset? Probably not, but he's a big asset.
No, but I think there's plenty of value in that kind of experience. Sure. And that's why, that's another thing when you're bringing in these players that you pay a lot of money for. I mean, you got to get as much value out of them on the field, off the field, as much as you can. I think there's two things with all three Texas teams, right? One, I think you mentioned it. There's more defined roles, right? Houston and Dallas obviously have new coaches, and even in Austin, right? I think again, like I mentioned, settling that midfield, more defined roles have made the three teams better. That's one. The other one, and look, I've heard this to death here in Houston, but about how competition it makes everything better, and that's true. But when it's better competition coming in, right? If you're going to bring in foreign players, they have to be better than the domestic talent, right? They have to bring the level up. Yeah. I think that's the case, obviously, in Dallas, right? Like you bring in Velasco now. Suddenly, a guy like O'Brien, maybe his spot's a little wiggly, right? Down here in Houston, Seca has only played a couple minutes in the game against Kansas City, but Griffin Dorsey, you guys have heard me talk about him, but I'll tell you what, this kid, he works his behind off, right?
Oh, thank you for higher. I thought that was going to go in a different direction.
I don't know if we're able to. I don't know how much leeway we have at 10 in the morning.
Yeah, true. Depends on how many cups of coffee people have. After you spring forward, man, I'm dragging.
He made a good save, right? You could say a game-winning save, depending on how the game was going. And then over in Austin, all I hear is Chris Bils talking about Danny Pereira, right?
Yeah, I know.
Unbelievable.
It is, but I mean, he had another outstanding game. I don't know.
Hold on. We'll get to him. I just want to wrap on FC Dallas with just a few quick final thoughts. I agree with what you're saying, Victor. We're going to get to Austin and Danny Pereira. Okay, Chris, Danny Pereira. We're going to get there. If you want more FC Dallas, check out, of course, the Striker Texas. And my three things, a little bit of praise for Brandon Cervania. And this week, I'm going to look at the homegrown midfield. It's a third game that we've had Paxton Pomykal, which we expected to start, Edwin Cerrillo, who we didn't expect to start, and Brandon Cervania, who we thought was maybe this in-between guy. They've all played. They've all started every single game, and they've all looked pretty good, especially against that national team with a tough midfield. That and more thoughts, including a full article on that Alan Velasco golazo, 600 to 700 words just on the goal, if he's done it before, when he's done it before, why he's done it before, and what he hopes to do in the future is on the Striker Texas. Also, he only speaks Spanish, so not many sources where you're going to get that direct. You can find it at the Striker Texas. Chris, let's move into your game, the Austin FC trip to Portland. You were there. You saw it at beautiful Providence Park. It wasn't necessarily a beautiful result for Austin after two amazing opening matches that we were a little bit skeptical about because of the opposition. Austin played a tough team, the MLS Cup finalists last year. They came away with a good account of themselves, but with 0 points.
Yeah, exactly. And the first half, I mean, this whole match, I think, was a fascinating, it was exactly what we wanted to see from Austin, coming into a tough environment, playing against a really good, well-organized Portland team. And guys, the first half to me, it almost felt like a playoff game. Just the way that these two teams were kind of battling and filling each other out, kind of a, I don't want to say a slow start, but definitely like a tactical start to this thing. And then it sort of started to open up. Yeah, it sort of started to open up around the half-hour mark. Austin had a couple kind of half chances that, if you don't take advantage of the few openings that, and it sounds like the chainsaw is coming for me. I was just going to say.
No, man, it's Timber Joey at your door, man. He's like, oh. You're gonna talk crap.
No,
now this is happening.
it's like I was just gonna say, like, yeah, if you don't finish your chances, the chainsaw's right around the corner for you at Providence Park, and
literally,
literally, and that's kind of what happened in this game. Bill Tuiloma had sort of a warning shot near the end of the first half where he sort of beat Julio Cascante to a header, put one off the post, and it looked like Austin could breathe a sigh of relief. Alex Ring put a cross for Maxi Arruti that, on first watch, it looked like it was too high, but kind of doing the rewatch last night, I think Maxi Arruti maybe should have done better with that. Maybe that's harsh, maybe it's not, but this is your center forward, your starting center forward, and if the ball hits your head inside the six, or right outside the six in the box, you got to at least put it on frame, and he wasn't able to do that. And then the second half started, and I think Austin kind of got a little out of sorts. They came out, they switched things up. They were really trying to go at Justin Rasmussen, the young left back who was starting in place of Claudio Bravo. And I thought he had a tremendous game, especially with, all that Austin was trying to throw at him. Diego Fagundes going at him in the first half, couldn't really break him down. Maybe had one moment that I think led to another one of those half chances, but nothing really going there. And so they switched Cecilio Dominguez over to that side. And I thought Cecilio, he had, a great chance to go one-on-one early in the second half. Rasmussen shut him down, and he immediately took out a frustration foul on Darren Espria to get the first of 4 yellow cards in about a 10-minute stretch that I think really just kind of rattled Austin, and from there it just kind of unraveled, and you could kind of feel this game swinging a little bit. I think that's the question that I asked Josh Wolf afterward, is like, how did you think about making subs before the hour mark? Of course, the goal comes at 62, and the subs come right after that. He sent in Ethan Finley, Johan Valencia, and I'm blanking on who the third sub was, but John Gallagher, I left back for Jean Kolbanich, who also was on a yellow. And I think that it's sort of a little bit in the rear view. You can easily say, hey, why not make those subs sooner? But in the end, it comes down to individual matchups, and it really had nothing to do with the subs. It was a corner kick, and Bill Tuiloma beats Ruben Gabrielson off the line, And it's tough because I thought Gabrielson had a really nice first start.
I wanted to ask you about that. It's his first start. He's a player who, Austin fans hope shores up the back line that was pretty rough last year. Center back was an obvious area of improvement. He doesn't do what he needed to do on the goal, but overall, you're happy with the Frenchman's performance?
I thought that he was really good.
Norwegian. I'm sorry. He's from France, Norwegian. I'm sorry. I apologize.
He came from the French league. Speaks a little French, which I was talking to Davey Arnaud about. We'll get to that. But Ruben Gabrielson, I thought he really showed himself well. Josh Wolf talked about wanting to have that experience. Kip Keller, as good as he's been, he's still young, and throwing him into Providence Park, I think they thought, with Ruben Gabrielson sort of settling in, that it was time to give him a shot. And I thought he did well organizing. He had, he completed near 90% of his passes, and watching it back last night, they weren't all easy. He had some nice diagonals, some really nice plays to break lines and get the ball up to Alex Ring and Sebastian Giroussi. And, guys, I thought he played well, but you can't, it comes down to little moments, and you can't switch off in a big one there. And that's what this match comes down to. Austin was trying to win the battles on the wings. They weren't able to, and they lost a battle in the middle on a set piece, and it cost them the game. So those are good learning moments. And I thought Gabrielson took it well. I mean, he set down, he was the only player that, Austin, offers up one player after the match, and it was Gabrielson. I thought that was
really just one
after road matches. Yeah. So they had to get to the charter, and so, but I thought,
but the charter waits for them.
Yeah, I know. Well,
let's get two in there. Come on, Austin.
We're working on that.
All right. We're also working on getting back in the locker room. I don't know if you saw that. MLB reporters back into the locker room with safety protocols. So MLS, are you listening? Yes, I randomly tweeted. We'll go through the proper channels and talk about that with our professional organization. Chris, you mentioned how good Justin Rasmussen was in this game as left back. There was a bit of a penalty shout that Austin fans, I think, wanted to see given. For you, penalty, no penalty? Should Austin have had a point from this one?
Yeah, it's tough. It's one of those where, you see it all the time with VAR, where there's just not a clear angle. I don't think that really shows, his arm is out and the ball, comes by, but the only shot that you can see the ball and the arm in, it looks like it may have come off his shoulder. It may have, just glanced off of, the top part of his arm, but it's not really clear. And I think that that's ultimately why, it wasn't overturned. And, I can kind of see the gripe, especially the players were all over it when it happened. So maybe that tells you a little bit. But I don't think
they scored 5. It wouldn't have been a problem.
Exactly. I mean, I think that, you can't, you go to Providence Park, you show well, you're waiting on one little chance to come, and I can see the frustration, but I don't think that this is the one that really cost them in this game.
Clearly, Austin doesn't get the win. Clearly, we still don't have all 3 Texas teams winning. But guys, truly, since we launched the Striker Texas last year, a little bit before this time last year, this seems to me to be the moment where the most fans are feeling the most good about their teams.
Austin, we didn't have much last year.
Austin already has 6 points from 2 amazing home wins. The Dynamo get a victory ahead of a home stretch. FC Dallas gets a win with Velasco looking amazing. Let's feel good. Let's feel good. Let's feel good. I mean, last year was rough. Last year was truly, even doing this show, as much as I like hanging out with you guys, as much as I appreciate everyone tuning in every Monday, as much as journalists, we cover the stories and just don't worry about we don't get too emotionally down by the results. Woof, last year was rough. Let's talk about the best things we ate this week. I was at home. Had some good food. Shout out Renew Coffee up in Frisco, where I watched Texas Tech lose the Big 12 championship. I had to get up to Frisco early, but they're looking good for the tourney. I think it's going to happen in March Madness. Victor, your Cougars are a 1 seed. Did you do anything to celebrate?
Conference champions. I'm going to give a shout out here to Texas Roadhouse, since we're talking about good food.
Honey butter, man. That's all right. And Chris, I hope you ventured a little farther afield up in Portland.
I did. I mean, I know you want me to give you the shout on Rail 'em In, which was a nice post game spot, but it was before pre-match, little spot right next to Providence Park called The Soup, Korean food. Had some really good bibimbap and kind of took in some vibes before heading into the stadium, and it was delivered by a robot, which I was not expecting.
I thought it was going to be delivered by Joel McHale.
No, this robot comes out of the kitchen straight for me. I'm like, what's going on here? But that was a nice experience. Very, very Portland. I feel like just nice. Unexpected vibes.
It's a great place to see a game if you haven't done a road trip up there yet for a match. I haven't been there since the expansion. Hopefully this year.
Oh, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to my guy Larry. I know he's listening. He was on the flight back from Portland, Alaska Airlines, with me, and I saw him both. It sounds like I'm making this up, but both before we were taking off, he was on the Striker reading some coverage, and then as we landed, that was the first thing he opened up as well. Which, why was I looking over his shoulder? I'm not sure. Just
what a creep.
Yeah, I know.
Larry, you should know Chris Bils is watching you. Shout out to Austin fans as well, not only because they're dedicated to reading Chris Bils' great coverage on the Striker Texas, but
I reached over and introduced myself, and he's a great guy.
I thought he
listened to the podcast. He asked me what the best thing I ate was, so I just wanted to give him a quick shout.
Also, shout out to the Austin fans who went to the U17, I believe, game between Austin and Dallas. I didn't see a result on that one, Chris. You know what happened there?
Yeah, Austin won 2-1.
All right. Well, promising academy, promising fans, promising times in Austin, promising times in all three Texas MLS cities. We thank you guys for joining us on this recap. We'll be back next Monday, 10 a.m. appointment viewing on YouTube and Twitter, or you can always catch us on the podcast in your preferred pod catcher. For Victor Araiza down in Houston, for Chris Bils in Austin, I'm Jon Arnold. And beautiful, the sun's coming up in Dallas, Texas. We'll talk to you guys next week on the Striker Texas MLS podcast. Take care.